The captain of the flight bluntly accused a black female passenger of theft and demanded an emergency landing to resolve the issue. However, at that very moment, a shocking truth left him and the entire cabin speechless. Who stood up against this injustice? Read on to uncover the full story. The sky was clear, and Meridian Airways' flight took off smoothly, carrying its first-class passengers to their destination. The luxurious cabin exuded an air of sophistication, filled with the gentle aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm fabrics. Passengers relaxed in plush leather seats, enjoying the tranquility of what was expected to be a flawless journey. Among the passengers was Camille Harris, a 35-year-old black woman dressed elegantly in a well-fitted navy blue suit paired with a sleek gold watch. With her polished appearance and an old book in hand, Camille seemed like just another ordinary passenger. In truth, however, she was the director of public relations for Meridian Airways on a covert mission to evaluate the airline's service quality and customer experience. Sitting by the window, Camille focused on her book, her sharp eyes discreetly observing every minor detail of the journey. A flight attendant walked past with a professional smile, offering warm towels to the passengers. A middle-aged businessman, Richard Grant, scowled as he accepted the service, clad in an expensive suit and sporting a disgruntled expression. He muttered something about the flight delay, impatiently shoving the towel aside. Camille spared him a fleeting glance before returning to her book. She was accustomed to such attitudes in her line of work, but she never underestimated the frustration of passengers like Richard. She remained focused on her task, to observe without intervening unless necessary. The flight continued uneventfully until a sudden cry shattered the calm. "My wallet! My wallet is gone!" Richard leapt to his feet, his voice trembling with anger. The cabin atmosphere shifted immediately. Passengers turned their curious gazes toward him. A flight attendant quickly approached with a gentle smile, attempting to defuse the situation. "Mr. Grant, please remain calm. Perhaps your wallet slipped under your seat. Let me help you look for it." "No need," Richard nearly shouted. "I'm certain I left it here. Someone stole it." His accusation struck the cabin like lightning, thickening the tension in the air. Richard's sharp eyes scanned the passengers, scrutinizing them one by one. His gaze landed on Camille and lingered. "You," he barked, pointing an accusatory finger at her. "I remember you were looking at me when I put my wallet down." Camille calmly lifted her eyes from her book, meeting his glare with a composed, cold stare. The murmur of whispers began to ripple through the cabin, the tension rising like a taut string. "Sir," Camille replied in a steady voice, "I don't know what you're talking about, but I assure you I have nothing to do with this." Before Richard could retort, a deep, authoritative voice rang out from the back of the cabin. "What's going on here?" It was Captain Andrew Lawson, the flight's captain, towering in stature and dressed in a crisp uniform. He entered with a stern expression and piercing eyes that swept over the passengers. His gaze stopped on Camille, and she immediately caught the glimmer of suspicion in his look. The situation had spiraled far beyond the bounds of a routine flight. Camille set her book down quietly, bracing herself for the storm to come. Captain Lawson stepped forward, his piercing gaze sweeping over the silent passengers who were watching intently. His commanding presence and stern demeanor only added to the oppressive atmosphere. He stopped directly in front of Richard Grant, who was still standing, his face flushed with anger as he pointed directly at Camille Harris. "What's going on here?" Lawson asked, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable note of authority. Richard turned to Lawson as if seeking an ally. "Her," he growled, jabbing his finger at Camille. "I'm certain my wallet went missing after she looked at me. She must have taken it." Camille sat still, maintaining her composed demeanor, though her eyes betrayed a hint of weariness. She slowly placed her book down on the tray table before her and raised her head to meet Lawson's gaze. "Sir, I have nothing to do with this," she said, her voice steady and firm. Instead of conducting a thorough investigation, Lawson quickly shifted his probing gaze to Camille. For a brief moment, his expression revealed not just suspicion but something more personal, a sentiment Camille immediately recognized: prejudice. Lawson crossed his arms, tilting his head slightly as his eyes narrowed in thought. Ma'am, to clear up this matter, I'll need to check your bag. This is a security issue, and I expect your cooperation. The murmurs of the other passengers began to rise. Some looked confused, others intrigued. Camille remained calm, though internally she felt the weight of injustice pressing down on her. Captain Lawson, she said, her voice colder now, I'm willing to cooperate. But first I'd like to ask what grounds you have to search my belongings. Do you have any evidence to justify this accusation? Lawson didn't respond immediately. His eyes flickered with irritation at being publicly challenged. He took a deep breath before responding in a clipped tone. We must ensure the safety of everyone on this flight. This is not personal. Camille could hear the evasion in his words. Having faced similar situations in her career, she recognized that this was more than just an attempt to handle an emergency. It was prejudice guiding his actions. A flight attendant, Emma Lee, stepped forward, her concerned gaze darting between Lawson and Camille. Emma was a senior member of the cabin crew and someone who often discreetly supported Lawson in contentious situations. Captain, I believe it would be best to clarify the situation to avoid any misunderstandings, Emma said, her tone calm but aligned with Lawson's perspective. Checking her bag might help ease the tension for everyone. Camille glanced at Emma, sensing the pressure mounting against her. She exhaled slowly and then rose to her feet with deliberate calm. If this is necessary to prove my innocence, Camille said, her voice icy, then I will allow you to search my bag. However, let me remind you that this could constitute a serious breach of Meridian Airways' internal policies. Are you sure you want to take this step? Lawson hesitated briefly at her confidence and sharp words, but quickly regained his composure. We need to resolve this matter immediately. Ma'am, he replied, dismissing her warning. Emma knelt and began inspecting Camille's bag. Its contents were meticulously organized: a tablet, a small notebook, and a neatly folded scarf. Nothing beyond the usual personal items was found. Nothing suspicious here, Captain, Emma reported, lowering her voice. Camille fixed her gaze on Lawson, her expression cutting. Is there anything else you would like to inspect? She asked, her tone sharp as a blade. Lawson didn't reply immediately. Instead, he gestured for Emma to check the bag again, this time more thoroughly. As the murmurs of discontent among the passengers grew louder, a new voice broke through the tension. That's enough. I saw his wallet fall under the seat before the flight even took off. Why is everyone so eager to blame this woman? It was Clara White, an elderly woman seated a few rows behind. Her words caused the cabin to fall silent, though they also darkened Lawson's expression, pushing him further into a defensive stance. Camille, knowing she had done nothing wrong, realized that this confrontation was far from over. Lawson seemed poised to escalate the situation further, his pride likely driving him to retaliate. But Camille wasn't intimidated. She slowly reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small wallet. Extracting a metallic ID card with bold embossed lettering, Camille Harris, Director of Public Relations, Meridian Airways. The cabin light reflected off the card, ensuring that no one could miss it. She held the card up to Lawson's eye level, her voice slow but authoritative. Captain Lawson, I think you should know who I am before proceeding with your actions. A fresh wave of murmurs rippled through the cabin. Passengers exchanged glances, and some looked visibly dissatisfied. Richard Grant, the man who had accused Camille, turned beet red and began retreating into his seat, as though trying to disappear from everyone's sight. Lawson frowned but quickly regained his composure. Though unsettled, he didn't want to appear weak. From her seat, Clara White suddenly pointed and exclaimed, "There's his wallet." All eyes turned toward Clara, who pointed beneath Richard Grant's seat. He dropped it under his seat. I noticed it when the plane took off, but thought he'd find it himself. Richard quickly bent down and pulled out his wallet, his face flushing even redder as he held it up. I'm sorry, he mumbled, avoiding Camille's eyes. Camille remained silent, her calm expression unchanging. Murmurs spread through the cabin. Some passengers shook their heads in disappointment. while others turned to Lawson with disapproving looks. Lawson stood stiffly, feeling cornered as the entire incident had undermined his authority in front of the passengers. Instead of admitting fault, Lawson attempted to regain control. "It seems the matter has been resolved," he said, as if trying to bring the ordeal to a close. "Everyone, please return to your seats and remain orderly." But no one was truly listening to him anymore. The trust of the passengers in Lawson had crumbled, and the silence in the cabin only made the atmosphere heavier. Camille, now seated again, opened her small notebook and began writing. She quietly documented every detail: Lawson's unilateral decision to search her bag without any clear evidence, his unprofessional behavior, and his apparent bias in handling the situation. Camille knew this wasn't the end. She sensed that Lawson was not simply acting impulsively. He was someone determined to defend his ego and authority. This incident marked the beginning of Camille's stand against systemic prejudice and abuse of power within Meridian Airways. The challenges she would face in the coming days would test her resolve, but she remained unwavering in her mission to ensure justice and accountability prevailed.